welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing a video because one of my lovely followers, Ashley, has asked me on Instagram if I could do like an advice or coffee talk type of video about moving out of home. Not only for the first time, like she's asked for the first time, but I feel like I'll cover moving in general, and just things like, you know, maintenance, bills, daily life, like basically getting organized for moving. I have moved 8 times in the last 10 years or 9 years. Nope, yeah, 8 times? Oh God. 8 times in probably the last 8 years actually. From 2009 until 2017, I've moved 8 times. And if you count moving houses in some of those places, it's like 11 times or something ridiculous. I have moved a lot and I have not stayed for very long. I think the longest I've ever stayed in one place was 3.5 years. So the rest were like every 6 months that I were moving. And these were really big moves as well. I have moved across the country multiple times and it's actually really easy and it's not as scary as you think. Every time I moved, I was way more excited to get to the new place, and I thought I would share with you how I managed to do it, what I did to set myself up, the basics, and the things you need to know to move and to organize your life if you are going to be setting up in a new place. So thanks to Ashley for messaging me and bringing up this idea. I think it's a really great idea to talk about. So I'm just going to share my experience with you guys and give you some tips on how to move and get organized with moving and your life, and let's get started. I'm going to start with just a little bit of a background. In 2009, it was my first year out of school and I moved to Sydney first for a couple of months. Then I moved to Jindabyne to do a snow season, which was honestly one of the most amazing things that I have ever done. I learnt to snowboard there and it was just so much fun. I moved home for a little bit after that. Then I moved to Melbourne for the first time and I was there for about 6 months and I was studying. And then I moved to Wagga because I wasn't enjoying Melbourne and my boyfriend at the time lived there and I didn't really have anywhere else to go, so I decided to move there and I switched to a different degree and I was there for about 3.5 years, I think. About 3.5 years. So that's the longest I've stayed anywhere. And it was honestly one of the best times of my life. Like, university life is so much fun and I loved it. Then from there I moved to Canberra because I changed my degree to long distance and I moved for work. And my family, like my brothers, were living there, so I moved to Canberra. And then after that, I moved to the Gold Coast for about 6 months. Then I moved to Brisbane for about a year, and then I moved to Melbourne after that, which was about almost 2 years ago now. So being in Melbourne is the second longest that I have stayed anywhere, and I love it here in Melbourne. I don't really have any plans of moving out of Melbourne just yet. I might move overseas. I think the next time I go to move, it will be overseas if I want to move. But for now, I'm happy in Melbourne and I love it here. I do have to move apartment sometime in the next 6 months, so I'm really excited because I'm going to move somewhere that I would like to be, and I also get to do all the moving videos and the moving vlogs, so that will be coming sometime in the next month when I finally get around to organizing myself and having to move out of this place. But super excited for that. So that's kind of my moving history. I've moved a lot, and I think the first thing that you have to do if you're going to move like across the country, like I've lived all over Australia at this point really, the first thing you've got to do is obviously have either money saved up, or if you don't have money saved up, try and find a job as quickly as possible. Thankfully, we live in a world where there's the internet and you can apply for jobs online. And so what I would do at those times, while I had some money saved up, it was never enough for me to live off it for a couple of months while finding a job. I always had to find a job before I moved to those places. So I would just go online. I worked in retail, so I would just apply for every retail job possible. I would do phone interviews and yeah, it was actually quite simple. And sometimes when I had a retail job, I was able to transfer within that company into a position that was already available up there as well. So if you do already have a job in a company, you can transfer with them. One of my brothers has just done that. He's moved from Canberra to Melbourne and he has transferred with his company. So that's a really easy way to look at getting a job. But you can do job hunting online, and that's one thing that you can do. If that's not something that you want to do and you'd rather find a job once you get there, just make sure that you have enough in savings to be able to pay for your bond, to pay for however many weeks rent that you will require, and to make sure that you can like look after yourself and live before moving and being able to find a job. The second thing is obviously finding a place to live as well. If you've got someone you can stay with to then go and look, that's something you can do as well. But again, online, the apartment that I have now, I didn't inspect it before I signed the lease. I inspected it the day of. I met the agent down here, so I applied for it, I got the apartment, and I met the agent here in this apartment and looked at it as I was signing the lease. Obviously, if I looked at the apartment, I was like, I hate this, I wouldn't have signed it, but it was exactly as the pictures were, and I loved it, so I signed it, and I was able to do this whole apartment and application online before even moving to Melbourne. So that was really, really simple. I also did have my brothers here where I was able to stay with them if I needed to, but it just worked out that sometimes you can just do it all online and it can work that way, which is really, really awesome. So those are the two major things that you will need to cover before moving to a new location is your job and having somewhere to live. But we live in a world where you can do it online, and I have done it and it does work. The next thing to talk about is if you are moving into a place like on the other side of the country or even in your hometown or wherever it is that you are, the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you have enough money saved up. You will have to pay a bond amount, which will be somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks rent up front. You will need to pay that to, here in Australia, it's called the Rental Bond Board. It's not actually the real estate agent, or if you're renting privately, it is to the rental bond. They hold that money, and if the apartment is in good condition or in the condition that it was left in when you go to leave it at the end of your lease, you will get that money back. So even if you're moving from one apartment to another one now, you have to pretend that that money doesn't exist, because you need more money to pay a bond before you get that bond back. Otherwise, you're going to be homeless if you're going to be switching apartments. I may have jumped ahead a little bit there. Just an example for that, when I go to move from this apartment, I need to have a whole nother bond ready to go for the next apartment before I get the bond back for this one. Otherwise, I will be left homeless, if that makes sense. I need to have enough money there to be able to pay for the next apartment as well as having the money for this apartment. It's like, it's a lot of money. So you've just got to be prepared and do your finances to know that you can pay for it. So you will need somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks rent for your bond. Then most real estate agents will ask for somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks up front. So you will always be 2 to 4 weeks ahead in your rent. I think most times they've asked for 4 weeks rent, and then you won't have to pay for another 2 weeks. And they usually do fortnightly. I currently pay monthly, and you can negotiate how you want to pay, whatever works for you. Some people get paid monthly, some people get paid fortnightly or weekly. It's up to you. But you will probably then have to pay rent 2 weeks later, and then you will always be 2 weeks ahead in your rent until you finally go to end your lease. When you sign your lease, you will have like a 6, a 12-month, or a 24-month contract. I've never had a 24-month contract. I've only ever had 6 and 12-month contracts. And you will get a condition report. This condition report will be like a list of every room in the apartment and every mark and damage that is already in that apartment before you move in, and you need to go through and double check before you move anything in what is wrong with the apartment, what was there when you moved in. You need to write it on this condition report so that you are stating that these marks on the wall or these faults with the apartment or house were there when you moved in, so that when you move out, you're not going to get into trouble or you're going to have to forfeit some of your bonds for things that you did not do. So it's really, really important. If you like, you can take video and photo just to be on the safe side. I've never had an issue with getting a bond back. I've always gotten my bond back, and I've always had really great rental references. So if you just look after the apartments, if it were your own, you will never have any issues. And then you can pretty much start moving in after you've done that. It's pretty simple. To get all of your electricity and all of your bills and everything set up, it's actually a very fast process. You can call the electrical company and set up an account if you don't already have an account. If you do have an account, it takes 2 seconds to just give them all of your details, and they can set up the electricity in your name, and the electricity will be switched on to your place that same day. Super, super simple. Or if the electricity is already running to that place, it will just be switched into your name, and it takes it really does not take a lot of time. Electricity and hot water is the fastest I would say in terms of getting your bills set up, you can do that the day of moving in and everything should be good to go, or at least it has been for me and my experience. Sometimes your gas and electricity and your hot water will all be on the one bill. Other times it might be separate. I think my hot water is separate to my electricity, and I don't even know what my gas is. I don't know if they're all separate at the moment. I really should keep on top of them, but that's kind of how those bills work. Internet, you can pick your provider. The internet in Australia will take you weeks. It will take like up to 3 weeks to be put on. So just be prepared, because telephone companies in Australia are really slow and really crappy. So just really be aware of that it will take time to get your internet in Australia. And I feel like those are the major ones, your internet and your electricity and everything. Those are my major bills for my home. So I have my internet direct debited, but my hot water and my electricity and my internet are direct debited every month from my account. My hot water, I do have to pay for myself. I could set up direct debiting, but I always forget to do it, and I just pay it myself when I get the bill in the mail. If you don't like paper bills, you can put them all through your email. I get my electricity and my internet through my email. It's just up to you. I just haven't been organized enough with my hot water to get it set up the same way as my electricity and my internet. But that's pretty much it for bills. It's really simple, very quick to get the electricity, water, gas on, but not so much the internet. That will take time. So when it comes to moving out, possibly for the first time, if you can afford it, live by yourself if that's something that you want to do. I could not have in any way lived by myself when I moved out of home. It's just not something that I could have afforded. So I lived with housemates, and having housemates can be really fun. It can also be an absolute nightmare. You have to kind of be very organized with them and try and make sure that the people you're living with are people who are like the same level of messiness of you. If you're someone that is an absolute neat freak and you're living with someone that is like a slob, it is just not going to work and you're going to hate life. But if you can live and find housemates that are a similar kind of personality to you in terms of cleanliness, it can be really, really easy. Otherwise, you're going to have to work out some sort of organizational system with your friends. I've lived with lots and lots of friends. When I lived at the Snow, there were 6 of us in one house. Then when I lived in another share house, I think there was 4 or 5 of us. 4 of us living in the one house. And then I've actually lived in a share house I rented out a room, and the other 4 housemates were strangers to me, and it was great because I got to meet some new people, and that was really interesting as well. So if you are looking to move out of home for the first time, try and find share houses, because it's going to be a lot cheaper than ever trying to live on your own. It was always a dream of mine to live on my own, and I now finally do it, but it is expensive. It is very expensive to live on your own. So I'm going to put that out there just so you know, it's very expensive. So some of the best places to try and find apartments, I love realestate.com. It's the best place to find apartments and houses to rent in, but in the share house where I was just randomly living with a bunch of other strangers, that one I found on Gumtree. I was looking for a room type of rental accommodation because I needed to live in a share house due to finances, but I didn't know anyone to be able to move into a share house with. And it's a really, really great way to meet people. So Gumtree was a really great place for that. This one was like a private rental. The lady owned the house. She also owned the apartments that were near the house, and she rented out this apartment to each of us individually. And she was so lovely. You've got to be very careful with individual places like this that are not real estates though, like individual people, because sometimes you can get dodgy ones. I thankfully have always had really great landlords and really great experience with renting. I've never had anyone bad before, which is something that is amazing, and I'm very lucky to have had that. But yeah, she was great, and like that was a really cool opportunity, and it was also a very like random last minute thing. I just jumped on Gumtree. I was been checking it that day, and I jumped on at nighttime. It was a brand new listing. I went in and saw it the next day, and I got it, and it was great. So Gumtree for those kinds of share houses really great. Just be careful of your landlord, and if you have a bad gut feeling about it, don't do it. Just kind of go with your instincts and work that out. But yeah, if you're going to be moving out of home for the first time, I would recommend a share house. But if you can afford it, have fun looking for apartments or places that are small, and then thinking about all the cool ways you can furnish it and whatnot. And that leads me into getting a house furnished. I didn't have a TV for 8 months of last year. Why? Because I don't watch TV, and it was not a top priority of me buying one when I got to this apartment. And I wanted to buy other things first, but I took my time in furnishing this place. You know, furnish what you can afford. Obviously, a mattress and having somewhere to sleep is probably pretty important, but you don't have to have a bed frame. Like, you can sleep on a mattress on the floor for as long as you need to be able to furnish a place. So it's a work in progress. Don't feel the pressure that you have to have a whole place fully furnished and functioning straight away. You can work on it. There are some really great affordable places. I think My Deal is a really great website that's super affordable furniture. My bed frame is from them. Fantastic Furniture is really great. My TV unit and my dining table are from there. Super affordable as well. Super Amart is really affordable as well. My couch is from there. Of course, IKEA. I have my desks. Everything in here is pretty much from IKEA. And of course, Kmart. Kmart is so good for all of your kitchen supplies and your utensils and just your bits and bobs around your apartment. Kmart is the best for that. So there are some super affordable places to look, but don't feel pressured like you have to furnish a house really quickly. I took my time. It took me 6 to 8 months last year to actually furnish my apartment, and now I'm like, I think I own too much and I need to get rid of some. So that's another thing. Also, check out Gumtree for that too. Sometimes people have some really great secondhand stuff. The very first time I furnished a house about 5 or 6 years ago, I got a lot of stuff off Gumtree. We got some great couches that were from Fantastic Furniture, but we got them from this older couple, and I think we paid $100 for the 2 couches when they were worth $700 together or something, and they were in perfect condition. So you can find some really great stuff on places like Gumtree as well. And that leads me into, I think, the last thing that I want to talk about, which is the process of moving and getting into moving, and that is like decluttering and packing things up. If you need boxes, go to your local clothing stores like Factory, Cotton On, Ruby. Like, I think that's probably my favorite because I used to work for the Cotton On group and they had really great packing boxes. And if you get them at a good time, ask them for their boxes that they have used to unpack their stock that day, and then that way you get lots of free boxes you can take home and just sticky tape back together, because they do flat pack them when they're like unboxing them. And that's how I moved most of my stuff, was through boxes from Factory and Kmart, or even Coles. When I was moving from Brisbane to Melbourne, I went down to Coles in the supermarket and asked them for all of their boxes that would be appropriate to box things into, which was really lovely of them. They are going to throw them in recycling, so they are more than happy to give them to you. If they're not happy to give them to you, that's a little weird to me, but that's a great way to be able to pack and store all of your stuff to move it, so you don't actually have to buy boxes. And it's a really great time to declutter and get rid of things that you don't need. So decluttering each time you move is awesome. You would think someone that's moved as many times as I have would own 0. But that's why when I moved here to this apartment, I didn't have very much, because I went from having a house with furniture to getting rid of all of that furniture to living in a share house again and having a room to then moving into another house. So I got rid of everything and then I've had to get everything again. So I did have obviously a really big declutter. Wardrobe declutter is the best time when you're moving. It's a really good chance to get rid of everything. And only take the essentials. I actually still have stuff stored at my mum's house. This Christmas, I swear, will be the Christmas that I will go home and declutter and get rid of the stuff from my mum's house. It's just stuff from when I was a teenager and when I left, and it's been there for the last like 8 years, and I need to get it. So sorry, Mum, and I'm sorry it's still in the shed. But I do need to do that. And yeah, I think that's kind of a lot of the stuff about moving and getting yourself organized to move and what you have to do to move. I hope I've covered the basics. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below. This is an incredibly long video and I've talked for so long, but when it comes to moving, there's a lot going on, and I hope I've simplified it for you. It's a pretty simple checklist. I will have it listed in the description of the things that you need to remember and the things that you need to have done before you move. And yeah, I hope you guys have found this video helpful useful or interesting. And yeah, if you did enjoy it, let me know. I might be able to do some talks like this about some other things that I've experienced or that I've done. And up the top here, you can check out my last video. Down the bottom, I will leave a link to another one of my videos, and I will talk to you in my next one. Bye.